Have you ever had a feeling that someone didn't like you, but they were just too polite to admit it? It starts small. You're sitting in a room with people you consider friends. There's laughter, conversation, shared memories. You think you're safe here, included, respected, maybe even liked. But then it happens. One of them makes a joke about you. It's clever, just cutting enough to make everyone laugh. They smile and say, "Relax, I'm only kidding." And you smile back. You laugh. Because what else are you supposed to do? But that night the joke lingers in your mind. The next time it's not just a joke, it's a compliment, kind of. Wow, that was actually good. For you. You freeze for a second, unsure how to react. Were they uplifting you or putting you down with a velvet glove slap? You brush it off again. You keep peace. You convince yourself you're overthinking it. Then you notice you weren't invited to last Friday's get-together. Again, you see the pictures later on social media, smiling faces, inside jokes, and empty silence on your phone. We figured you were busy, they say later. And again you nod, even though your gut twists. Weeks go by. You try to reach out. Hey, want to catch up soon, but they're always busy, always swamped. Except they're not. You see them spending time with others, always available for someone else, but never for you. You begin to realize that you're not crazy, you're being quietly pushed out. Not with cruel words, but with indifference. Not with confrontation, but with absence. And somehow that silence hurts even more. This is the truth most people are too afraid to face. Some people don't dislike you openly, they erode you quietly. Behind smiles, under compliments, and through forgotten invitations, they make it clear you're not really welcome here. And unless you see the signs, you'll keep giving your energy to people who quietly root for your failure while pretending to clap for your success. It usually starts with laughter. You're in a group of people, maybe colleagues, classmates, or friends you've known for years. The conversation flows, and then suddenly you're the punchline. Someone cracks a joke about your outfit, about how you talk, about your laugh, your work, your dreams. They do it with a grin. Everyone chuckles. You smile too. Maybe you even laugh, because if you don't, you'll seem like the sensitive one, the one who can't take a joke. So you play along. You minimize your discomfort. You think, it's not a big deal. They probably didn't mean anything by it. But deep down, something tugs at you. A quiet voice whispers, "Why is it always me?" The truth is uncomfortable, but here it is. People who repeatedly make you the punchline aren't just being funny, they're subtly asserting dominance. It's not about humor, it's about control. They're gauging what they can get away with. They're seeing how far they can go without being called out. And the more you tolerate it, the more they escalate. I remember being close to someone who joked about me constantly. They made comments about my voice, my clothes, even the things I cared deeply about, like my creative projects. They always played it off like it was harmless. "I'm just messing with you," they'd say. But it was never playful. It always carried a subtle edge. And over time, those jokes didn't just sting, they started shaping the way I saw myself. That's how it happens. Slowly, the humor starts to sound like truth. You begin to internalize their words. You doubt your instincts. You wonder if maybe you're overreacting, or worse, if maybe they're right. Maybe you really are that awkward, that weird, that incapable. That's the damage. It's a psychological trick, and most people don't even realize they're playing it. But some do. Because these jokes serve a purpose, they allow someone to insult you without facing the consequences of direct cruelty. They get to diminish you and still look charming, witty, popular. It's manipulation wrapped in a punchline. And here's the part that no one wants to say out loud: you are complicit the moment you laugh along. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but I had to swallow it too. Every time I giggled nervously, every time I stayed silent while someone chipped away at my confidence, I was giving them permission. I was teaching them how to treat me. And it took me years to realize being nice isn't the same as being kind to yourself. Letting people disrespect you just to keep things lighthearted doesn't make you easygoing. It makes you emotionally invisible. There's a belief we've all been sold that standing up for yourself makes you dramatic, that calling out cruel jokes makes you uptight. But the opposite is true. You're allowed to say, "That's not funny." You're allowed to pause the room with your silence. You're allowed to draw a line even if it makes things awkward. Because here's what matters: the people who truly care about you won't need to laugh at your flaws to feel superior. They'll protect your insecurities, not parade them. They'll see your awkwardness, your quirks, your unique weirdness, and choose to cherish it, not weaponize it. True friendship doesn't rely on power dynamics. It doesn't require you to sacrifice dignity for belonging. So the next time someone says, "Relax, I'm just kidding," ask yourself this: would I ever say something like that to someone I truly respect? If the answer is no, then why are you letting them say it to you? You don't have to yell. You don't have to cause a scene. Sometimes a quiet, "That wasn't funny to me," is enough to shift the power. Sometimes walking away from the table is the loudest truth you can speak. Because here's what no one teaches you. Disrespect often arrives wearing a smile. And if you're not paying attention, you'll confuse cruelty for closeness. You'll laugh with people who are laughing at you. But not anymore. From this moment on, let your silence be thoughtful, not fearful. Let your boundaries speak before your breaking point does. And never again shrink yourself to fit inside someone else's idea of a joke. You are not a punchline. You are not an open mic. You are not here to be reduced for someone else's amusement. It's strange how something that sounds like praise can leave you feeling small. Worse than small, confused, doubting, silently humiliated. You've probably experienced it before, though you might not have known what to call it. Someone looks you in the eye and says, "That was actually really good for someone like you," or "You're smarter than I expected." They say it with a smile, maybe even a warm tone, but you feel it, that sting, that slight twist in your gut. You want to say thank you because technically it's a compliment, but you don't feel grateful, you feel insulted. It's like they've slapped you with silk gloves. And here's the hidden truth that was the goal all along. This isn't just awkward wording. It's not an innocent misstep. These are backhanded compliments, subtle manipulative ways of putting you down while pretending to lift you up. And they are far more dangerous than direct insults. Why? Because they confuse you, because they bypass your defenses, because they wear the costume of kindness even though underneath they're saying something much colder. Don't forget your place. I remember one of the first times I recognized it for what it was. I had poured months into a creative project, something I was deeply proud of. I presented it nervous but hopeful. A colleague came up afterwards, smiled and said, "Wow, this is actually impressive. I didn't think you had it in you." That's the moment it clicked. The compliment wasn't about my work. It was about their low expectations of me. And by praising me, they reminded me of the box they had put me in. That's the design of this tactic. It's subtle, almost clever. These compliments are framed to look supportive, but they are rigged with quiet condescension. They serve one purpose: to undermine your confidence while maintaining social cover. You can't call it out without seeming dramatic. You can't defend yourself without looking insecure. So most people stay silent. They internalize it. They wonder if maybe it's true, maybe they really aren't that smart or talented or worthy. And that's the real damage. You begin to question your own value, all while thanking the person who devalued you. Let's be honest, we've all been there. And some of us, if we're really honest, have probably done it too. Because these moments don't just happen randomly. They usually come from insecurity, from people who feel threatened by your growth, your light, your potential. They see you shining, and instead of rising to meet you, they try to dim you just enough that you second-guess yourself. It's emotional power play 101. They'll say things like, "You look really good today." You're surprisingly articulate for someone from your background. Not bad considering you just started. It's always wrapped in subtle qualifiers, always framed so that it sounds nice but leaves a scar. And here's what's worse: the people who do this most often are the ones closest to us. Friends, co-workers, even family. They know your buttons. They know your past. And they know exactly how to wound you with a smile on their face. But here's the turning point: you don't have to accept it anymore. You don't have to play polite with someone who weaponizes praise. You don't have to stay silent when a compliment makes you feel small. These aren't gifts, they're disguised judgments. They're mirrors reflecting the other person's insecurities, not measures of your worth. Now, when someone gives me a compliment that doesn't feel right, I pause, I breathe, and sometimes I ask thanks. But what do you mean by that? It's a simple question, but it works like a spotlight. Suddenly the person is on the spot. They have to clarify. They have to confront what they were really saying, and often they stumble. They backtrack, because deep down they know they weren't being kind. They were being careful, strategic, dismissive. But I'm not here to be dismissed anymore. Neither are you, because your self-worth is not up for debate. Your confidence should not hinge on someone's fragile ego, and praise should not come with a hidden hook. You deserve to be celebrated without conditions, to be recognized without being condescended to be around people who aren't threatened by your shine, but inspired by it. So the next time someone delivers a compliment that lands like a slap, trust your gut. You don't owe anyone gratitude for their disguised superiority. You don't have to say thank you for something that was never really for you. You are allowed to question it, you are allowed to reject it, and you are absolutely allowed to walk away from anyone who disguises control as kindness. Because that's not love, that's not support, that's manipulation dressed in manners. And you deserve far better than that. You don't always notice it at first. It begins quietly like a whisper you can't quite make out. The group you usually hang out with starts planning things without you. You hear about it after the fact. A dinner you weren't invited to. A weekend trip no one mentioned. A movie night that somehow never made it to your messages. You scroll through your feed and there it is, smiling faces, inside jokes, selfies taken in places you should have been. You pause. You stare. Your chest tightens. Maybe they forgot you tell yourself. Maybe it was last minute, or the most common one, maybe I really was too busy. And then they say it, the classic excuse. We thought you had a lot going on. Or, oh, you would have loved it. It was totally unplanned. But deep down, something doesn't sit right. Because if they really wanted you there, they would have made sure you knew. If they valued your presence, it wouldn't have slipped their mind. People don't accidentally exclude those they care about. They make time for the people they want close. They make room at the table. They send the invite. They check in. What you're experiencing is passive social rejection. They're not pushing you out with harsh words or open hostility. They're doing it quietly, politely, hoping you'll get the message without them ever having to say it. And the worst part, you start to feel like maybe you deserve it. You question your worth. You wonder what changed. Did I do something wrong? Did I talk too much last time? Am I just not likable anymore? That's how exclusion works. It doesn't just remove you from the event, it removes you from the emotional equation. You become invisible, not hated, just forgotten, left out. And somehow that hurts more than being openly rejected. I've been there. I remember watching friends I once considered close post pictures from a gathering I never knew was happening. I wasn't traveling. I wasn't working. I was just not invited. And when I asked about it casually, gently, the air got tense. They stumbled through explanations, laughed it off. You know how it is. Just one of those nights. But the more it happened, the clearer it became. This wasn't a one-time oversight. It was a pattern, a decision. That's when I learned a hard truth: exclusion is a form of control. It's how people maintain power in group dynamics. They don't confront you, they freeze you out. They don't say, we don't want you here. They just stop making room for you. And when you bring it up, they flip the script. You're overthinking it. Don't be so sensitive. Suddenly you become the problem, not the silence, not the erasure, not the exclusion. You. But here's what I've come to understand. It is not sensitive to want to feel included. It is not needy to want to matter. It is human. True friends don't make you feel like an outsider in your own circle. They don't hide plans. They don't selectively leave you out and then act like it's no big deal. And yet we let it happen, over and over, because confronting it feels uncomfortable. Because we don't want to be seen as dramatic. Because we're afraid that if we ask the hard question, why wasn't I included, we'll get an answer we're not ready to hear. But ask it anyway, because silence will not protect you. Politeness will not restore your place in their world. And pretending not to care doesn't make the pain go away. It only buries it deeper. When I finally confronted those who kept excluding me, it changed everything. Some got defensive, some distanced themselves even more. But others, the real ones, apologized. They hadn't realized how their choices made me feel. And they started making an effort. That's the turning point. When people value you, they include you, even in last-minute plans, even in casual hangouts. Because inclusion isn't about perfection, it's about intention. It's about making space, letting someone know they matter. And if someone consistently fails to do that, they've already answered the question you were afraid to ask. So here's the truth. You are not a backup plan. You are not optional. If someone keeps treating you like an afterthought, you have every right to stop showing up for them like a priority. Let go of the rooms where you're only welcome when it's convenient. Leave behind the tables where you're barely offered a seat, and start investing your time in the spaces and people who choose you on purpose. Because real friendship doesn't forget, it remembers, it reaches out, it makes room, and you deserve nothing less. We all know life gets busy, schedules clash, deadlines pile up, responsibilities multiply. It's part of being an adult. But sometimes the word busy becomes more than a reason, it becomes a shield. A soft excuse, a socially accepted way of saying, you don't matter to me the way you used to. The first time it happens, you don't think much of it. You reach out maybe to grab coffee, catch up, or just reconnect, and they respond with a warm but distant message, I'd love to, but things are just crazy right now. You nod, you understand. After all, you're busy too. You don't take it personally. But then it happens again, and again, and again. Every time you suggest a day, they're slammed. Every time you follow up, they've got something going on. But strangely, they always seem to be free for someone else. You see it on their stories, hanging out, laughing, spontaneous weekend trips, just not with you. You tell yourself it's probably a coincidence. You remind yourself that everyone has different circles, different seasons, different needs. But that gut feeling doesn't go away, because it's not about one missed invitation. It's about a pattern of consistent, one-sided availability where their calendar only opens when it benefits them. Here's the uncomfortable truth: when someone is always too busy for you, what they're really saying is that you're not a priority. They might not be trying to hurt you. They might not even realize what they're doing. But their actions speak louder than their words, and what they're saying is clear. I've made space for others, just not for you. And that realization hurts more than we like to admit, because it forces us to confront a deeper fear. Maybe I'm the only one holding on. Maybe this connection only exists because I keep showing up. I remember this feeling vividly. There was someone I had once been incredibly close to, the kind of friend I would have dropped everything for. But over time, they grew distant, not in an explosive, dramatic way, but in the slow, subtle withdrawal of warmth. Conversations shortened, replies delayed, invitations vanished. And the phrase I kept hearing over and over again was, "I've just been so busy." At first, I accepted it. I gave them grace. But after months of being postponed, ignored, and politely declined, I started asking myself the hard questions. Because while they were too busy to respond to my texts, they weren't too busy to comment on others' posts. While they couldn't find an hour for a phone call, they were flying across the country to see people who mattered to them. That's when it hit me. Busy isn't always about time. It's about energy, intention, choice. And some people will string you along with empty words just enough to keep you hoping without ever showing up for you in a real, consistent way. But here's the deeper wound: when someone keeps telling you they're busy, what they're really giving you is uncertainty. And uncertainty over time becomes emotional erosion. You begin to feel like you're chasing something that doesn't want to be caught. You wait for their attention like a guest waits for an overdue host standing alone in a room where you were never truly invited. And yet you stay, because you remember how things used to be. Because part of you still hopes they'll come back around. Because you don't want to believe that someone you care about has quietly let go without telling you. But sometimes they have. Sometimes people outgrow us. Sometimes they drift into other versions of themselves, and we're not part of the new story. And while that's painful, it's not something you can fix by trying harder. The truth is, your worth is not measured by how many times someone can ignore you before you finally walk away. Your value isn't determined by how long you're willing to wait around hoping they'll change their mind. When someone keeps choosing everything but you believe them, don't let busyness become the lie you cling to in order to avoid facing the real reason they've drifted. Because the longer you hold on to someone who's already let go, the more you lose your grip on yourself. I've learned this lesson through bitter clarity. The right people make time, not excuses. They don't breadcrumb you with half-hearted messages. They don't go silent every time you need support. They don't make you beg for a spot in their schedule. They want to be there. And when someone doesn't, no matter how softly they phrase it, it's okay to let them go. Not with resentment, not with a dramatic exit, but with dignity, because your time is precious. Your presence is a gift, and it's far too valuable to keep offering to people who only see it as optional. It's subtle, so subtle that at first you brush it off. A handshake that doesn't land, a hug they awkwardly dodge, a high five left hanging, a shared couch where they choose the farthest corner. You tell yourself, maybe they're just not a touchy person. You don't want to read into it. You remind yourself to respect boundaries. And of course that matters. But something still doesn't sit right, because you've seen them with others. They lean in, they touch shoulders, they embrace tightly naturally. They're warm, just not with you. That's when it hits you. It's not about their personality. It's about their discomfort with your presence. And they're showing it without ever saying a word. We often think of physical touch as something reserved for romantic relationships, but in reality, it's one of the most basic and universal human languages. A simple pat on the back, a side hug among friends, a hand on the shoulder during hard times. These aren't grand gestures, they're small subconscious signs of trust, safety, and closeness. So when someone consistently avoids even the most casual physical connection, especially when they don't behave that way with others, it's a red flag. A quiet but undeniable one. And it leaves you wondering, what did I do wrong? I remember a time when I worked with someone who seemed perfectly pleasant in conversation. They were polite, smiled at my jokes, responded in meetings, but something always felt off, distant. And it wasn't until I paid attention that I noticed every time I leaned in slightly during a conversation, they would lean back. When others would exchange handshakes or quick side hugs, they would stiffen if I even tried. It was like I was radioactive, and the space between us was intentional. At first, I blamed myself. I spiraled through thoughts. Did I make them uncomfortable? Did I come on too strong? Am I being too sensitive? But the more I reflected, the more I realized something deeper. Their avoidance wasn't about who I was. It was about what I represented to them. Something in our dynamic triggered a reaction they weren't ready to own. This is what no one tells you. Physical avoidance is emotional communication. It's the body saying what the mouth won't. It's often more honest than words. And in many cases, it signals one of three things. Discomfort, they don't feel emotionally safe around you. Disdain, they look down on you and create physical distance to reinforce hierarchy. Unresolved tension, perhaps, from envy, judgment, or unspoken resentment. Whatever the reason, it hurts. Because we're wired to interpret physical space as relational space. When someone stands far from you, they're not just protecting their body, they're guarding their vulnerability. And when they reserve warmth for others, but withhold it from you, they are sending a message you're not in the circle. And the most painful part, it's hard to call out. You can't exactly walk up to someone and say, "Hey, why don't you ever hug me?" It sounds needy, it feels awkward. And so most of us stay silent. We don't ask the question. We just absorb the answer in every step back, every flinch, every cold shoulder. But let me say this clearly, you're not imagining it. And you're not crazy for noticing. People who truly care about you don't flinch at your presence. They don't treat your hand like it carries weight. They don't withhold basic human gestures that communicate, "I'm here, I see you, I trust you." Now, of course, not everyone is physically expressive, and not all cultures or personalities value touch the same way. But the key is consistency. If they are affectionate with others but withdraw only when it comes to you, it's not about their nature, it's about your relationship. And pretending otherwise will only leave you lonelier. So what do? You observe. You stay aware. You respect boundaries, theirs and yours. But you also take it as data, because when someone goes out of their way to avoid closeness, whether physical, emotional, or both, they are defining the relationship for you. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is listen. I used to chase after those connections. I'd try harder, be warmer, act more enthusiastic, hoping I could melt the ice. But all I did was exhaust myself trying to earn proximity I never should have had to fight for. Now I understand physical warmth isn't something you beg for. It's something that flows naturally when trust is mutual. So if someone recoils every time you reach out, literally or figuratively, don't take it as a personal failure. Take it as information. Information about who sees you and who merely tolerates you. Information about where you're welcome and where you're not. You deserve to be in relationships where hugs aren't hesitant, handshakes aren't forced, and your presence doesn't cause someone to step back. You deserve to be received, not avoided. There's a moment in every person's life when the noise fades, the world gets quiet, and all you're left with is your pain. It might be heartbreak, loss, a crisis you didn't see coming, a season that strips you of control. And in that silence, you look around for the people you've always shown up for expecting, maybe even assuming that they'll be there. After all, you've been there for them. You've taken their 2 a.m. calls, listened to their endless rants, celebrated their highs, and sat beside them in their lowest lows. So when your world begins to fall apart, it's only natural to believe they'll return the favor. But instead, nothing. No text, no call, no check-in, just silence. A silence so loud it echoes. At first, you make excuses for them. They must be swamped, you say. Maybe they just don't know what to say. You give them the benefit of the doubt because the alternative is too painful to face the possibility that they were never really there for you in the first place. But the days stretch on and still no one reaches out. And that's when it hits you. Some people only stay close for the good times. They're there when life is easy, when your energy is full, when your smile is effortless. But the moment you become a little too heavy, when your light dims, your voice trembles, or your joy disappears, they retreat. Not because they can't help, but because they won't. Supporting you would require emotional effort, empathy, discomfort. It would require seeing you in a vulnerable state, and not everyone is willing to do that. So they vanish, quietly, cowardly. And when they reappear weeks later, they do so with casual indifference. Sorry I've been distant. Things have been crazy. No mention of your pain. No apology for their absence. Just surface-level noise to distract from the depth of their failure. That's the betrayal. No one prepares you for the realization that the people you thought were loyal were only attached to the version of you that was easy to love. The version of you that wasn't inconvenient. That didn't need anything. That didn't bleed. But here's what I've learned the hard way. Real support is not about timing, and it's not about convenience. It's about presence. It's about someone showing up even when they don't have the perfect words. It's about sitting in the silence with you holding space and reminding you that you're not alone even when everything else has fallen apart. The people who disappear during your darkest hours are showing you who they truly are. They're telling you in their own quiet way, your pain is not worth my discomfort. And while that truth is heartbreaking, it's also liberating. Because once you know who won't be there, you can stop hoping. Stop waiting. Stop giving more of yourself to people who only show up when the weather is good. I used to take it personally, their absence. I thought it meant I was too much, that my problems were too heavy, that I was somehow unworthy of care. But the more I healed, the more I understood their disappearance had nothing to do with my value and everything to do with their emotional immaturity. Some people simply aren't built for depth. They're not equipped to hold pain that isn't their own. They haven't done the work within themselves to be a safe space for someone else. So instead of showing up, they opt out. And you are left carrying your burden alone, wondering if you ever mattered to them at all. But instead of letting that harden you, let it refine you. Let it sharpen your discernment. Let it teach you who is worthy of your time, your loyalty, your presence. Because not everyone deserves access to you, especially when you're bleeding. From now on, reserve your energy for the ones who show up without being asked. The ones who don't need a polished version of you. The ones who check in even when they're busy, who make space even when it's hard. Those are the people who belong in your inner circle. And as for the rest, let them go. Gently but fully. You don't need to explain, retaliate, or beg. Their silence spoke volumes. You're just finally listening. Life is too short and too painful at times to surround yourself with fair-weather friends. You deserve something deeper, something truer, something real. The kind of connection that stays through the storm and holds your hand even when the road gets dark. And that begins with honoring your own worth enough to stop chasing people who run the moment you need them most. There's a specific kind of pain that doesn't come from betrayal to your face, but from the whispers spoken when you're not in the room. Gossip is one of the most cowardly, corrosive forms of disloyalty, yet it often wears a mask of harmless chatter. It's not loud, it doesn't confront, it slithers, it spreads, and it always starts the same way with trust. You confide in someone. You lower your guard, show your vulnerable side, speak truths you haven't even admitted out loud before. Maybe it's about your struggles, your doubts, your dreams. You assume they'll hold it like a secret. You believe they're safe, and for a moment you feel connected, understood, less alone, until something shifts. You notice people acting differently around you. Their smiles tighten, their tone changes. Someone makes a comment that hits a little too close to what you shared privately. And then the truth unfolds in pieces. Someone you trusted has been talking, not in your presence, not in a way you can defend, but in shadows, behind closed doors, behind your back. That's the betrayal. Because gossip isn't just idle talk, it's a violation, a deliberate act of disrespect dressed up as just venting. People try to downplay it, it's not a big deal. Everyone talks, don't take it personally. But the reality is that when someone shares your private struggles as entertainment, they aren't just being careless, they're being cruel. They are weaponizing your vulnerability. And what hurts more than anything is that it usually comes from someone who smiled at you just hours before, someone who hugged you, laughed with you, called you family. It's confusing, it's destabilizing, because now you're questioning everything, every past conversation, every confession, every silence. Was it ever real? Were they always just collecting material to share when you weren't around? That uncertainty eats away at your peace. You replay the things you said, wishing you had held back, wishing you had been more guarded. And that's the damage of gossip. It doesn't just ruin your trust in the person who betrayed you, it makes you question your ability to trust anyone. It makes you smaller, quieter, more skeptical of every bond. And yet here's the part that stings most people who gossip about. You don't see it as a betrayal. They see it as normal, casual. They justify it to themselves. I needed to get it off my chest, or I was just worried about them. But gossip is never about concern. It's about control. It's about temporarily feeling powerful at the expense of someone else's dignity. It's a way to gain social capital by putting someone else's name on the table. And once your story becomes their currency, your truth is no longer yours. It's reshaped, repackaged, and retold through the lens of their judgment. I've been on the receiving end of that kind of violation. I've confided in someone I considered family, only to later hear my words distorted in someone else's mouth. It felt like my insides had been turned inside out. I wasn't just hurt, I was humiliated. And when I confronted them, they laughed it off, said I was overreacting, said I was being too sensitive. That's the gaslighting that often follows gossip. They don't just betray you, they try to make you feel crazy for caring. But you're not crazy, you're not overreacting. What they did was real and it wasn't okay. People who gossip are not neutral. They are choosing a role in your story, one that positions them as the observer, while they slowly dismantle your reputation. And let's be honest, if they do it to you, they'll do it to others. If they gossip with you, they will gossip about you. It's only a matter of time. You are not the exception, you are the next chapter. That's why it's so important to pay attention, not just to how people treat you directly, but how they speak about others when those people aren't around. Because one day you won't be in the room. And what they say, then that's who they really are. So what do you do when you realize someone's been gossiping about you? You don't need to match their energy. You don't need to start your own smear campaign. You just need to remember that trust once broken is not owed again. You can forgive someone and still never share your secrets with them again. You can smile at them in public and still know in your heart that they no longer have access to the deepest parts of you. That's not pettiness, that's protection, it's wisdom, it's emotional maturity, and most of all, it's self-respect. You deserve relationships that are built on loyalty, not leverage, on truth, not theatrics, on mutual protection, not mutual performance. If someone can't honor your absence, they don't deserve your presence. Let them go. And this time, don't explain. Just walk quietly, firmly, and without hesitation, because real friends speak your name with care, even when you're not around to hear it. Your energy is sacred. Start protecting it. One of the hardest truths we'll ever have to face is that not everyone who smiles at us has good intentions. Some people don't come into our lives to grow with us, they come to extract from us. They'll disguise criticism as humor. They'll serve condescension as compliments. They'll pull back when you need them most, all while pretending they still care. And if you're not paying attention, you'll mistake these subtle signs of disrespect for normalcy and start adjusting your behavior to fit the discomfort. But here's the deeper truth. Your time, your presence, your energy, these are not cheap. They are not for sale to people who consistently make you feel small, unwanted, or invisible. You were not born to beg for space at a table that was never built with you in mind. You don't need to laugh at jokes that cut you. You don't have to chase people who are always too busy. You don't have to keep giving to relationships that shrink when you suffer. The lesson is this: your peace is too valuable to share with those who disturb it. You deserve friendships rooted in mutual respect, not subtle competition. You deserve conversations where your name is protected, even in your absence. And most of all, you deserve to be around people who see your presence as a gift, not an obligation. So from this point forward, make a quiet decision, protect your energy. Pay attention to the way people react when you're not at your best. Do they disappear? Do they mock? Do they talk behind your back? If so, believe them the first time. Respect yourself enough to stop making excuses for people who wouldn't even show up for you when it counted. Not everyone belongs in your story. And that's not cruelty, that's clarity.